I'm Jeff Helfrich, State Representative for House District 52. Life's messy, government's messier. When I was on the street, I got to see what worked and what didn't work. And in Salem, I see a lot of things that aren't working. I want to cut through that red tape, get to simpler government, and get to stuff that works for you. Here's our next episode. That's perfect, right? Welcome back. This episode, I've got Jason Dudash from the Freedom Foundation, the West Coast Director. We're going to talk about the overreach of public unions and how that's complicated some lives of people here in Oregon. With that, Jason, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's a pleasure.
Like last time we tried this podcast episode, we're at the Dorchester event, and it was just getting kind of complicated, hard, tongue-tied. It was 10 o'clock at night. Oh, I can power through this. I failed at that miserably, but thanks for getting out here to Salem after I got out of session today. I really appreciate that. So generally when I have people on my podcast, I have their bio, I have yours. I'm going to read it to make sure I get it right. And if I don't get it right, stop, correct me. That's not right, Jeff, because it's been a long day.
No worries.
This session's just kind of getting to the point, like a lot of tomfoolery getting ready to happen.
Right there with you,
Yep. All right, Jason. So Jason is the West Coast Director of the Freedom Foundation, where he oversees strategic development. He's a lifelong Oregonian from Almsville, Oregon. He graduated from Corbin University with a degree in criminal justice and forensic psychology. He worked in the Oregon legislature, managed state legislative campaigns, and consulted in private sector. Jason also serves on the Oregon Advisory Committee for the United States Commission on Civil Rights and is a best-selling author. He's from a small town here in Oregon. And so I want to get into this first part of the segment. Let's talk about how growing up in a small community there in Almsville, how that kind of shaped your career early on and how it shaped your mission moving forward to kind of where you're at right now.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Jeff. I'm very thankful for growing up in a community like that, and it's quite striking looking back and how much it's changed, how much it hasn't changed over the last nearly 30 years. But I think when you grow up in a town of a couple hundred people compared to a couple 100,000, you learn that really your first line of defense in everything is each other. You learn self-reliance. When you need help, you don't go knock into the government, you go knock into your neighbor. If you need extra hands to bale hay, to help fix the barn, you call your neighbor. There's no helpline for the government for that. Well, in this state, there might be now, but there wasn't.
There will be at some point, right?
There wasn't back then. And I think that's really guided my career and how I view things today, that we are our own best defense in nearly every aspect. I know what's best for me. We know what's best for our communities. We don't need the government to tell us. We don't need Tina Kotek to tell us. We're going to be the best voice for us.
Yeah, there's a lot you just said right there, and you kind of mentioned it, but I want to pull it out of you a little bit more. One of those life lessons growing up in a small community, what's one of those things that has driven you in your work, just you personally, just your work ethic, your moral compass? What's one of those things that just has kind of kept you going in this direction where you're at?
Yes, I don't think about it that much, but thinking about it now, I think it's a pretty strong lesson of self-reliance. The Freedom Foundation, we're a couple dozen people battling a multi-billion-dollar organization. You don't get to just give up that easy. You dig in, you do what you have to do, and you get the mission done. You just keep charging forward.
Yeah. So you studied criminal justice, and then it's the forensic psychologist portion of that, and then you graduated Corbin University. Worked in the Oregon legislature, you worked on campaigns, and then you did some private sector consulting. How did all those segments, I can see how the pieces come together, but how did that get you to the Freedom Foundation and the work you're doing with the Freedom Foundation?
I'd say it's a good combination of a happy accident and the Lord's direction. I always grew up. I wanted to be a Marine. My sister was a Marine. My grandfather was a Marine. That's all I ever wanted to do. Had some health complications early on that prevented me from doing that. So I decided the next best thing was to be a cop. Went to school for that, and one of our prerequisites for that was a intro to politics class. And we were told that for our final, we could, write a 15-page paper contrasting two candidates, explaining why you thought whoever's going to win is going to win, why you thought whoever's going to lose is going to lose, using political theory and polling and all that. Or you could volunteer for a campaign and come talk about it. And so I thought that sounded easier.
Little did you know.
I took a position on a campaign with a gal running for state house here, and started out doing, really basic door knocking, phone banking. Eventually started giving me more responsibilities, started paying me, something I was just kind of naturally good at. And along the campaign trail, obviously you meet a lot of people. And when legislative session came around, got a couple opportunities to work in the building, took a spot with Senator Knope through the long session. Out of that led to working in the private sector for a little bit, and then back to the campaigns. You know how that cycle goes.
Yep.
And it was my last campaign cycle in 2018 where my now boss called me and asked if I'd be interested in coming to work for the Freedom Foundation. And at the time, I think it was August, said, I don't know what that is. In the middle of a campaign, I'll call you back in November if I don't have anything going on. And I did, and realized that, this is why we keep losing in Oregon. And if we want to change that, we've got to focus more attention here, and dove in head first and been here ever since.
Yeah, I want to unpack. You're the representative, I got to get this right? Oregon Advisory Committee for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. What is that? What is that? What is all that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I just got appointed 2 months ago. And so this is part of a broader strategy that several conservative organizations are working in, where there are countless boards, commissions, everything in between in the federal government. And all of those are usually run by leftists. We're very busy people. We usually have our hands full of other things. And so I was asked if I'd be interested in this opportunity last year. And at that point, we would have been serving in a minority, and they wanted some good rabble rousers that weren't afraid to fight and push back on some of the lunacy that we especially see coming out of the West states. But
like
now,
Oregon,
yeah,
California, Washington,
in the coming of the new Trump administration, a lot of those people kind of ran away with their tail in between their legs. So we now have a conservative majority on our board, and essentially we'll pick topics to do a deep dive in, and within the civil rights era to advise the president and congressional members on our opinion. Basically, It's not a huge deal, but it's just another.
Well, it's not nothing. Right?
Yeah, but it'll be fun.
Good. So let's unpack the Freedom Foundation for a little bit. Some people might not know what that is and what that means. And my philosophy, my back to basics. I'm building a back to basics army for a variety of reasons, but I think government's lost its way. It's messy, and life's messy, but government's even messier. But talk about the Freedom Foundation, how you think that ties into the back to basics principles that I try to stand for and try to move forward with.
Well, hopefully this will be very easy for your audience to understand, because the Freedom Foundation only does one thing, and that's fight government unions. Government unions are the single largest funders of radical leftist politicians and policy groups in the entire country. And they take our money, taxpayer dollars, out of public employees' paychecks to funnel into leftist campaigns of individuals who will agree to go into office to do two things, which is raise taxes and grow government. Because when those two things happen, they get to hire more public employees, which means more union dues, more money back into the politicians, and round the cycle goes. So in 2018, the Supreme Court looked at this and said the idea that a union can take money directly out of your paycheck and use it to advance political causes that you don't agree with is actually a direct violation of your First Amendment rights. And overnight, they made it illegal for any public employee anywhere in the country to be required to be a member of a labor union as a condition of their employment, of a government union as a condition of their employment. When that happened, that was a really big deal. Government union bosses were shaking in their boots. They thought it was going to be the end of their corrupt empire, but nothing really happened. And it's really not hard to figure out why, because the average public employee isn't sitting on the edge of their seat for every Supreme Court case, especially when it relates to something as seemingly innocuous as labor law. Right. So we figured out that we actually have to go out and find and tell these people. So now we run, you can think of it like a full-scale political campaign that lasts every day, every year. And I can see how tired your eyes look when I say that, where we have canvassers that speak to public employees at their homes and offices. We do mail, email, texting, billboards, social media ads, everything you can think of to make sure that public employees know their rights, know exactly what the union's doing with their money, and help those that want to leave.
So I was a union guy for 25 and a half, call it 26 years with Portland and Multnomah County. And I remember I didn't really pay too much attention to politics early in my career. It's like, okay, president and your voting thing. I knew civics, but I just never wanted to go do my job, be left alone. And talking to some of the old timers where the PPA union would give money to candidates for city council, which was very powerful, trying to, make sure police officers had the tools, had good pay, and they would endorse them and go through the whole process. But I remember the old timers and the e-board and everybody talking like, they never seem to help us out. They're always beating us up, but they want our money and they want our help, but they never help us at the very end when it comes time for a contract or just being that advocate and having the door open. And, I see that now. And you have what you call the Freedom Foundation's, what they call the cycle of corruption in the unions, right? And you did walk through that, but break it down a little bit more and talk about what you see, if you've seen any examples of that here in Oregon. Because when I was House Republican leader, even before that, when I was just running and I won, you would see these just union people get bussed in. These public unions employees get bussed in, or phone banking or whatever, writing the cards. And it was just, for my district, it was an uphill battle. It was like a 7% negative voter registration. I was able to overcome that. I flipped it by, 1 year by 12. I was down 7 and I won by 5. So all those said, give us examples in Oregon where it's just so glaring. Maybe even this last election cycle that you saw stuff.
Yeah, well, I want to start. You said a lot in that.
That's a lot to unpack too, right?
And I'll say, I personally am not anti-union. Yeah. There are plenty of good unions out there. I have a friend who I would say is far more conservative than me. He's a proud member of IBW. Thinks it's a gold standard union. Who's done a lot for him. I think there's a lot of argument that first responders need a union.
I will be the first one to sit there and tell you, if you get in a deadly force encounter and you end up taking somebody's life, and if they can fire you at a political whim and not have due process and collective bargaining, all those things that, the first responders, where it's police or fire, there's a lot of stuff that gets lumped into there's these other things, but I'll just focus on police because that's with my profession for so long. You need to have somebody that can actually stick up for you and make sure your Garrity rights are protected, make sure your constitutional rights are protected, because you still are a U.S. citizen. And there's the political wills of government when it comes like the city of Portland. If it could be the most justified shooting, deadly force encounter in the world, but it could be messy, and they just soon fire you to make sure a political statement's there. So I am a union guy, still believe in them, but I think there's some times where they overstep their bounds, and let's talk about that.
And we don't do any active outreach to first responders for exactly that reason.
Right.
If anybody wants to come to us and want out, of course we'll help them. But you contrast the scenario you just described with somebody working at the DMV. Not the same argument
No,
at all.
absolutely
And
Somebody might get their feelings hurt because they got talked to meanly, but okay, moving
there you
on.
go. Well, usually they're the ones doing the mean talking too there, but I digress. You asked for examples in Oregon. I think to drive the point home, I want to give a national example. The National Education Association, the largest union in the country, the teachers union, in last year they had an annual budget of $387 million of dues that they had collected from teachers across the country.
Million.
Yes.
Okay.
Their mission statement, their primary goal is to advance and represent the interests of teachers. Good enough. Happy with that. Do you want to take a guess at what percentage of that 387 million was spent on anything remotely connected to representation?
0.01%.
You're way more negative than me. It's about 7%.
Okay.
But over half of their budget was spent on pure politics, in outright gifts to both campaigns and policy groups that have nothing to do with education, nothing to do with representing the interests of teachers. And so when you talk to a public school teacher here in Oregon or anywhere in the country, I know we all know them, they are dealing with some pretty significant issues, and they've been dealing with them for decades. Why is nothing changing? It's because their number one advocate that supposedly is in their corner to fix all of that doesn't actually care. Government unions' goal today is growth. It's power. They are a private business. Just like any other private business, they want to grow. They want to make more money. But for them, being in government, the only way they can do that is by increasing the size and scope of government. And that's another great one. We'll remember here, what was it, 3 years ago with the so-called Student Success Act
Yeah.
that was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime investment to finally fix public education in this state. I think that was 3 years ago, and we've had 4 or 5 very public strikes in this state. Nobody has any money because, again, even though the OEA was the one championing that bill as an investment for our students, there was not a word in that legislation that guaranteed a dime of that money would go into the schools. It just grows government, and that's ultimately what they care about.
Yeah, we've seen that, when I was leader last cycle, there was a couple bills out there that expanded these caretaker jobs, in-home caretaker jobs that ended up being union employees, and state helped kind of fund it through a nonprofit.
Yep.
There's sneaky ways they do stuff, and it's about power and control. And if you can control the 3 branches, or I don't think people realize this. The 3 bases, the power base in Oregon is the governor, the Senate president, and the Speaker of the House. The governor's pretty self-explanatory, the executive officer of the state. What people don't understand is the Senate president and the Speaker of the House, they determine what bills go to committee, what bills will come out of committee, and who's telling them what bills should come in and out of committee? Well, the people that put them in office, the people that were their biggest advocates, their supporters, who funded their campaigns or helped fund to get the supermajority. And I think that's what you're getting at this point with the money and where it goes. I understood races. I had tough races. I've lost. I won. But when you're in the driver's seat, if you will, and you're trying to fund campaigns, and you just watch these union checks just come in, tens of thousands of dollars going to the people that we're trying to, put up a fight against and get people the message out. This is why this legislator shouldn't be in the legislative body. This is the one you want. It's hard to compete.
Yeah. And that's ultimately what this is all about. You should be thankful that you were not leader 10 years ago when it was much worse. And actually,
that was Rep. McLean at the time. Now it's Senator McLean, right?
Yeah.
And he's the reason why I became a state legislator back in the day. So
And Oregon actually has been our most successful state. We have got over 30,000 public employees in the state of Oregon to opt out. Oregon has seen the largest decline in public union membership per capita in the entire country because of our work. And what that has led to is about a 70% decrease in government union political expenditures between the 2016 and 2024 cycles. They certainly still have money, but gone are the days where those tens of thousands of dollars of checks are going to everybody running for office with a D next to their name. Now they really have to to pick and choose of their priorities. And I think that here's my analysis. I'll be interested in yours, but the reason that we're in a super minority right now, and obviously I say we very loosely, is that Trump, basically. I think that he hurts us in this state. He drives turnout, but he drives turnout on both sides. That all the seats in the House and the Senate that were decided by a couple hundred votes, those people weren't excited to vote for whatever Democrat was running. They had no unifying message here. There's nothing in the state that's going well. We're at the bottom of the list of just about everything. And also, candidly, the candidates kind of suck. They weren't very enjoyable, exciting people. But all those people that I think would have otherwise stayed home came out to vote against the president and down the ballot for the Democrats. And so while I think we're in for a very uncomfortable couple of years here, I think the horizon is very hopeful because, of course, the supermajorities are going to go way too far. The party in power, the people responsible there have never been responsible for signing the front of a paycheck. They've never built anything meaningful in their lives. They have no idea of how most Oregonians are living. And when we have what I'm sure we'll put together a great list of candidates in 26 and 28, and the very divisive figure of Donald Trump is no longer in the picture, I think this state is going to have a real opportunity in the perfect landscape to make some significant change.
So I guess where I will push back just a little bit, and if you look at my district, the numbers where they're at, and quality candidate matters. But my race, I outperformed the ticket with all Republicans, just by voter turnout, what the percentage was, and people in the county. And Hood River is really blue. Clackamas County is red. The part that I have, Multnomah County, is red. But outperformed the ticket. And I think where we lost a seat. And it was unions, and it was these non-government organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, was that you said that dollars aren't quite as plentiful. They have to pick and choose their candidates. We had one race that, $1.2 million was spent. We lost that race. It got flipped at the end. And I think the power of the unions now is that membership to get out the vote. And when they would register to people to vote, they drilled down in the data like nobody's business. Data is the key to this. And they will look at a district. They looked at the district that we lost, and they went and found, oh, here's a mom with kids that hasn't registered to vote, because they can look that up through the census stuff. And they're not registered to vote. They will have somebody that looks like them with kids, a mom or a dad, knock on the door. Hi, I'm so-and-so. We see that you're not registered to vote. This is the most important election of our lifetime. We can't let Donald Trump win. He's all the bad things. And they develop a relationship. So would you be interested in registering to vote? Because obviously Motor Voters showed that there was fraud. We exposed that. And so they went out and delivered it by hand. And then that they had that taken care of, then, hey, just to let you know, they went back and this is who you should vote for. You should vote for this person here because they're going to help you. They're just like you, all these things. Then ballots get turned in, and it's getting close to the end of the ballots getting turned. Hey, we noticed that same person that developed that relationship. We noticed you didn't turn your ballot in. Would you like us to help you turn that in? And we were up 500 or so and felt comfortable. And then as the days went by, it kept slipping. And then 187 votes, whatever. It was just a small number. That's where I think the power of unions makes up for the money that they can organize, get people out there to volunteer because they're drinking the Kool-Aid, thinking they're on the right side of justice here. And I'll disagree with them all day long, but how does the Freedom Foundation help us with that I know you're nonpartisan, but what are your ideas, and how do you think, whoever it is, but where do you think, because you ran campaigns, I oversaw a lot of campaigns, and And like I said, I've won and I've lost, and the ground game's important. But candidate micro targeting, using force multipliers where we can, but they've got the ultimate force multiplier. How do we counter that? How do we work against that?
Yeah, and I'll speak as myself here, not
Delaney,
on behalf
just
of
Jason.
the Freedom Foundation. But this is something you're exactly right in that data is king, and this is something that, quite frankly, I think our side has been behind the ball on for as long as I can remember. The Democrats, I think, have always outplayed us in this sphere, where if they're, I don't care if it's a water board seat, a city council seat, a state representative seat, whenever something's open, the back of the caucus office down there, they've got this filing cabinet where they just open it up and it's like, oh, we've got this guy for here, this guy for here, this guy for here. And for us, it's typically more like knocking on your door in September and saying, hey, Jeff, you want to run for the state legislature?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Right.
But and so I think we've recognized that. We've recognized that shortcoming, and other groups are getting involved. I was thankful to see that Scott Pressler is going to be coming to Oregon and trying to replicate what he's done in states like Pennsylvania and elsewhere.
He's working, I think, with Representative Deal.
Oh, good. I didn't know that. That's even better.
It's the what is it that he's?
I don't know if his group has a name. I think it's just him.
Okay. Maybe
I've only known him.
I'm thinking it's something different. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a long day, dude. It's been a long day.
But it's, I'll tell you, the Freedom Foundation won't do that. We're going to continue fighting unions. But it's other groups. You need groups like the Freedom Foundation that are singular focused for all of these issues.
Right.
You look at the left side of things, and there are hundreds of nonprofits for every issue you can think of.
Oh, yeah.
And on the right side of things, you have a bunch of nonprofits. We have a bunch of nonprofits that do a bunch of things, that want to talk about gun rights, that want to talk about property rights, that want to talk about taxes, that want to talk about right to life. Those are all great, worthy causes, but when you try to fix them all at one time, you end up not doing anything well. And so I think we really need to replicate more of our model and pick your issue, work yourself out of a job, and then move on.
I think because we're so small in that we have a lot of mission creep. Oh, we can do this. We can, instead of singular focus, this is the mission, this is what we're doing, and then have a series of people focus on that. I think you're exactly right.
Yeah. And the other portion that you mentioned earlier, back on the money, that I want to highlight something very significant that happened here during the last election. We'll remember, I want to say it was around September time, SEIU sent out a big press release that they were doubling down on Tina Kotek. They were going to send her another $1 million to get her over the hump. The Oregonian, OPB, Willamette Week, everybody ran with that press release before the transaction had even posted on the Secretary of State's website. But when it did, it showed that $1 million came from SEIU International in Washington, D.C., not from SEIU 503. Right. That's never happened before. They've never had to import money into this state to accomplish their political goals. So that, for us living here, that's a good and a bad thing, right? Where we've shown that you can defund them on the local level, but at least for the time being, they still have a several $100 million war chest sitting in Washington, D.C., which is exactly why we took this operation out of the West Coast into all 50 states.
Yeah. So because of your success with JANA, the Janus decision, and you've gotten a lot of pushback from the OEA and others, they're trying to counter and pass laws here in Oregon to bypass Janus. And I think is it House Bill 3789.
Yeah.
So what challenges are you facing now in Oregon? It led up to that. There's a lot of people screaming, fire when there was no fire ahead of time, and you're doing all this stuff. And I watch these committee hearings, and they do a really good job of organizing and getting all their people in there, and they're crying. It's just like a soapbox story, because the conservatives and Republicans, they got a job, they're working, right? So talk about that House bill, what you're facing there, what the allegations are, and how, just they're not being intellectually honest is a nice way to put it.
That's a very nice way to put it. I would not.
You can put it. You
that
can
way.
use your own words. Those are my words.
We'll let that sit. But yeah, so another part of what we do have a lobbying portion, a policy portion of our work, but it's almost exclusively in red states. We're actively working on offensive legislation in 13 or 16 states this year. Normally for us, there's not a whole lot of opportunity on the West Coast, but we pay attention, and every word, every bill that came through with the word union in it, we looked at it this cycle, this session, and the text of the base bill here says that it criminalizes the fraudulent misrepresentation of union representatives. Okay, we read that, said we don't have anything to worry about it. We don't do that. And we were noticeably absent during the first public hearing, where the presidents of SEIU, AFSCME, OEA, and OSEA all got up and lied through their teeth for an hour, saying that Freedom Foundation staff are going to members' homes wearing their union T-shirts and name badges, pretending to be members of the union to trick them into leaving, which logically does not make iota of sense to me. That I'm from your union, I work for your union, and I want you to leave it. I don't get the argument there, but that's the one they're sticking with.
Did anybody push the "that's not right" button at all, or did the
nobody pushed the "that's not right" button there? But they but it became clear that what the bill actually does is, to be clear, if the behavior they were describing is happening, it is already a crime. It is a crime to misrepresent yourself as any individual, any business in this state. So much so that Dan Rayfield, when he became Attorney General, declared consumer protections one of his number one priorities, right. Using those same exact statutes that the unions are pretending don't exist. So what they've done is rewrote that definition of fraud to essentially be whatever the union says it is. So any one of our mailers that we send out, which every time we send out a piece of mail in Oregon, it's over 100,000 pieces, they can find any issue with it, say, this is fraudulent, go in front of a left-wing judge. They don't have to prove that they were damaged at all, and be automatically awarded $6,250 per incident. So think of that like per piece of mail. If they're able to find 10,000 employees that want to sign on board and said, yeah, we didn't like receiving that, or even 1,000. The goal here is to tie up our attorneys in court, try to get a bunch of money out of us and waste our resources. They're asking the state to legalize lawfare against a political opponent.
And where did we hear that before? Where did that happen before? Didn't that our sitting president, didn't he kind of?
Yeah, I think that might have been in the national conversation.
Okay. All right. It sounds like the same playbook over and over again.
I want to stress that we are very clearly the target this time. Mm-hmm. But when you open this door, it could be you next time. You in your capacity as a legislator, any business. This is crazy what they're asking for. But the good news is, I think we were able to cause quite a mess of it on the House side, and I appreciate your help on that effort. And I don't think
fun to cause chaos.
I don't think they were expecting the pushback that we were able to generate in such a short amount of time. So we have another public hearing on the Senate side tomorrow, and I don't want to forecast too hard, but I do think we have an opportunity to kill it in committee. Just they have no evidence. There has not been one piece of evidence that this massive problem exists. Right. We got a legislative council opinion on the House side confirming that the behavior they're alleging is indeed already illegal. And I think there's very serious constitutional questions around the bill, around free speech, that you're delegating free speech authority to a private organization to say what can and can't be said about them. Right. That is, I don't see that standing up in even some of our most leftist courts in this state.
I want to walk back for a second. You said Dan Rayfield used the consumer protection portion of the DOJ to do things like this. Is that what you said?
Yes, he's made advocating for consumer protections one of his number one priorities. Fraud of senior citizens, all that kind of stuff.
But he's trying to use that for this issue?
No, not tied to this bill.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
I was just saying that to emphasize that these laws do indeed exist, and they're being used by the Attorney General right now.
Okay. That's a lot to go through and what you guys are facing just because the unions got mad at you and this is payback. That's all it is, just retribution.
It's the cost of success in a blue state. We know we've done this for over a decade now. These people are never going to change the rules, never going to change what they do. So they're going to try to change the rules. They are going to be very happy with the supermajority. They funded a big portion of it, and they're going to expect something in return.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's how it works.
That's how it works. You mentioned we had 3 branches of government in the West Coast states. There might be 4, depending on who you ask.
Yeah. There you go. That's the dark side of the politics, is that dark money that comes in. Let's talk about the Teacher Freedom Alliance, that concept, and that's kind of going to wrap up our episode. But you've helped teachers leave the OEA. I think 20% of their membership is left. Why don't you talk what that is, how that helps teachers, and how does that kind of wrap up my approach to back to basics and getting government simpler? Because there's a lot of things that complicate government, and this is, I think, one of them. Yeah.
So getting teachers to opt out of the union has always been the hardest for us. Say if we're going after state employees, send out a piece of mail, it'll go to one of 5,000 people working in a marble building here in downtown Salem. They might not even know what the union is, right? They just signed a card when they took the job. Now we're telling them they can save $1,100 a year. They say, sounds great, sign it, send it back out. But when you talk to a teacher about the union, when they think of the union, they usually think of Mrs. Smith, who works 2 classrooms down, who they've taught alongside for the last 10 years and is their local shop steward. And most of the time, teachers are very happy with their local union because that's who's actually shoulder to shoulder with them in the school, working to fix the very real issues that are present. But what most teachers don't understand is that they are actually a member of 3 unions. They're a member of their local, they're a member of the state union, and a member of the national union. And for teachers, it varies by salary, but teachers' union dues are much more expensive on average, between $1,200 to $1,500 a year. Only 16% of that stays in the local. The rest gets shipped out the door to the state and the national union, which is almost entirely political.
So do you know what the percentage is of that? You ever seen what the percentage goes to the state and then the national?
It's a bigger chunk for the state and a smaller portion for the national. It's somewhere between that 60-40 mark, 60-30 mark, sorry. So we've always really had to try to thread the needle where we're rightfully demonizing and attacking the state and the national unions without making teachers feel like they're turning on each other in their school. And so a couple years ago, we launched the Teacher Freedom Summit, which is, every year you see the National Education Association and American Federation of Teachers host these massive conferences where they talk about the most insane things that you could possibly imagine, and they do it on camera. And there's never been an alternative for the teachers who just want to teach, who don't want to be a part of that. And so we made one. And we had a 3-day conference in Denver, Colorado, with about 400 teachers to make sure that they're not only knowledgeable about their rights, but also equipped to go back into the classroom on the offensive against the unions. Because it's one thing when a teacher hears the message from us or from our mailers, but when you're hearing it from a trusted colleague that you've taught alongside, it usually carries a lot more weight. And so what we saw from those conferences the last couple of years is both years about a 20% increase in teacher opt-outs across the country. But we also learned that for some of the most conservative teachers who are with us on all the issues, they abhor everything the unions do, the union still offers enough perks to keep them from opting out without having a legitimate alternative. So we made one, the Teacher Freedom Alliance. where it is a non-union association that teachers will be able to join to get all of those perks through us rather than the union. The number one reason people don't leave is both the NEA and AFT offer a $1 million liability insurance policy. And that exists, say if a student says that you hit them or touched them, that policy, and the parents want to come after you personally, that policy exists to protect you in that scenario.
Right.
And the unions have used that so effectively as a weapon of fear, as an imaginary dragon that they have to protect themselves.
Boogeyman's right around the corner, going to get you.
But they don't know how rarely that policy is ever used, and they also don't know that the policy is not in their name; it's in the unions. And so there's no actual guarantee that they'll have access to it should they need it. So we'll be able to offer a $2 million liability insurance policy that will be in their name. We'll be able to offer professional development credits that are actually dignifying to their profession and aren't just reading white fragility and all the other woke nonsense we see pushed here in schools in Oregon. And alternative curriculum that is actually dignifying to this country and pro-capitalism, and more importantly, it'll be a network of like-minded teachers. When you're a teacher in a very pro-union school and you don't think of yourself that way, the goal is to make you feel alone. They want you to think that you are the only person. You're never the only person. And so this will have the same, almost sorority type feel of your people in it with you. You just won't have all the baggage that comes with being a member of the teachers union.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I want to kind of wrap up our episode here. One of the things that struck me was last year when you invited me to the Freedom Foundation where you had Trey Gowdy. And that was a great event. Got to talk to Trey Gowdy. I'm like, the guy could watch this guy on Fox News. He just sits down. He has that draw and just keeps you going on, and just super smart. He just tells a story.
Yeah.
It's like I like that guy.
Yeah.
And just talk about what that does for you and helps your cause and what that means. Because I really enjoyed that event. I thought that was just a tremendous event. I had unfortunately some tragedy that happened in my life then when my dad was on his last days, and I was there, and I flew out the next day to go be with him as he passed. But it was still a tremendous event, and I really appreciate you inviting me to that. But let's talk about the people so they know what to expect if you see that invitation come through, or you see something pop up somewhere. Hey, we should maybe go check that out. Yeah,
well, we've got again this year on October 4th. We have Seth Dillon coming in, the CEO of the Babylon Bee.
That'll be good. I like that one. Save me a seat.
Yeah, we'll do. We do that every year. We're not an events organization by any means. We focus on our mission, but I think especially in states like Oregon, those are so important for so many reasons. Kind of like just what I was describing with a teacher in the schools. Sometimes we as conservatives can feel alone in this state. When we see the lunacy on our TV coming out of the legislature every day, that it's a hopeless battle, and it's not. There's a lot of us here, and this state can change. And so what we really try to do there is inspire hope, show one area where we are legitimately winning, and give people some enthusiasm to take back out there that this state is not worth giving up on. It is too beautiful to let the communists win. And I've lived here my whole life. I would like to die here, and I'm not going to be packing my bags anytime soon. And that's the feeling that I want to give to everybody that comes to that dinner. That we are here, we are willing to fight, and it's a fight that we can win.
Jason, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate this. A lot of good stuff to unpack, and I learned a ton just talking to you now, but more so over the course of our different conversations. Back to Basics Army, you got to hear from Jason from the Freedom Foundation, kind of where things are at and what their mission is, and trying to get some even ground for us to get some more conservative people elected here in Oregon. Till next time, buckle up. We're going to have another show coming. Thanks.